All right, boys and girls, today is the day. It's officially the day that we put this beautiful powertrain back up in this super sleek, silver sexy, or whatever I was calling it, back in this super awesome budget base model Boxster. No more messing around. By the end of this episode, this engine is going to be running inside of this car, and we might just even take it for its first little spin after getting all this put back together. So I'm done talking about it. Let's go freaking do it.
Rippin', tearin'. The rippin' and the tearin'.
And after much crawling around on the ground, as you can see, our beautiful 2.5 liter M96 engine and its 5-speed Getrag transmission is back up in the whip. I'd say overall everything went pretty smoothly with the exception of a few of the cables in the very front of the engine. They definitely changed some things with the later versions of the Boxster where it wasn't such a convoluted mess up there, but you really kind of have to pay attention to how those cables are slotting in with regards to one another when you're putting the engine up in the car, or rather lowering the car onto the engine. So aside from some minor rearranging as we were putting the car down, everything went very smoothly. Now comes the very exciting task of just plugging and chugging. We have to put all the coolant hoses back together, tighten down the power steering lines, get on the top, plug in all the electrical harnesses to every single little thing. But arguably, the biggest task at hand is getting the engine and transmission back up in the car, and we can say that is checked off our list. All right, well, I'm gonna get to plugging and chugging, and pretty soon, we'll be able to start putting fluids on this thing. Well, friends, we're making so much progress, and it feels really good. So in the last little clip, I showed you that we got the engine back up in the car and mounted in place. But I've spent the last several hours basically reattaching everything. Coolant hoses, electrical harnesses, exhaust. Everything has been super simple up until this point so far, with the exception of the exhaust, which I had a little bit of an episode with, we'll just say. I practically threw my back out. It was pretty cool. Good news is that is back up in the car, which means it is on to putting fluids in this thing. That is literally going to be the last step before test firing this car. I'm not going to go ahead and reattach every single undercover and everything. I want to basically have proof that everything starts and runs nicely before we attach every little thing. Otherwise, it's just a bunch of wasted time if we need to pull all that stuff back off to access something to remedy a potential issue. So on the note of fluids, I am starting with coolant because that can oftentimes be a huge pain if you have a coolant leak somewhere and you need to figure out where it is. So I've got my vacuum bleeder attached to the coolant expansion tank right now, as you can see. So I spent about 10 minutes pulling the system down to vacuum. It gets to about minus 26 bar with this particular vacuum bleeder. And then to prove that you don't have any leaks, you let it just sit with a vacuum pulled on it, and basically you watch this needle. If the needle starts to return back to atmospheric pressure, then you know there's a small leak in the system somewhere. And so far that needle hasn't moved at all, and it's been sitting without Venturi vacuum for better part of 7 minutes. So I'm gonna actually let that go probably another 5 or 6 minutes just to make sure it doesn't pull down any further. Then we will release all of the coolant into the system. You can see here, I've got 4 gallons of super freshy McFresh Fresh Porsche brand coolant mixed 50-50 with distilled water sitting there. All right, friends, well, it is now time for the ultra satisfying task of releasing all of this coolant up into the cooling system. It has been sitting for about 20 minutes and holding perfectly steady at minus 26 bar, which means we can assume we have no vacuum leaks at this time. There's always a chance that something will crop up. However, this is a pretty good indication that we don't have anything. The reason I say that is because right now, of course, everything is under vacuum. And of course, a cooling system operates under pressure. So in the event that we could be closing a leak, for example, in like a rubber hose, it's like sucking the rubber hose together under vacuum and it's not leaking, but under pressure, maybe it opens a leak. So it's not a perfect test, but it's a pretty solid, like 99% check. All right, here we go. Ultra satisfaction coming your way. Drop our hose down in the bucket and release. All right, I'm gonna finish filling this thing up. Then I'm gonna put some oil in it and power steering fluid. I won't bore you guys with those details. And then we can move on to, dare I say, firing this thing off for the very first time. Let's friggin' do it. Well, all right, people, here we go. The very first start on my freshly refreshed 2.5 liter M96 engine in my 1998 Boxster. Couple things to keep in mind, and you know, I feel like I say this every single time we do a first start after putting an engine back in one of these cars, but you might hear ticking because these are brand new lifters. They need to inflate with the oil. You might see a little bit of puff of smoke. That happens. You might get some lean pops, you know, so keep in mind we just swapped the fuel filter on this, which means that as we crank it, we need to, you know, not only prime the fuel system, but fill up every single fuel line, including that massive canister of a fuel filter. So it's going to take a second as we crank it. We might hear some weird noises along the way. All right, well, we've got coolant in the car, we've got oil in the car, we've topped up the power steering fluid reservoir, and everything's hooked up on the engine, at least I think so. So, moment of truth, let's go ahead and see if we can get this thing to run. Alrighty, let's see what she does. Mind you, we need to prime the fuel system, so it is very much not primed currently. It's trying. Hopefully just one more prime and it'll go. She's going. She's going. This thing sounds quite good. So I'm gonna go ahead and shut this thing off, check some levels real quick. We'll just make sure that the oil's at an okay level, even though I did kind of overfill it, but each cylinder head tends to take about a quart after a dry start. It just holds all that oil, and so no doubt the sump is going to be low. Additionally, I'm going to go ahead and check our power steering fluid level, and then we can start really getting this thing up to temperature. All right, let's go ahead, check some fluids, but successful first start. I'm psyched. Okay, so I just finished running this thing for about 20 minutes, and everything sounds and operates very well. It idles very smoothly, revs up very smoothly, comes back to idle very smoothly. And in that time, we were able to get the coolant up to temperature, got her on the thermostat. That way we could circulate the coolant through all of the things that it needs to be circulated through. The heat now blows nice and hot, so we know it's circulated up to the heater core, and we have the system seemingly nice and bled, but I'm sure that the expansion tank coolant level will drop a little bit after the first drive. It always does. What else? Oh, and as I noted, with regards to the first start and how the cylinder heads pull at least a quart each, I was exactly right. I had to add 2 quarts to get it back up to the proper oil level. It is wild how much oil one of these engines takes from a completely dry fill. So from now, I'm just gonna begin putting everything back together. Obviously, I need to put the trunk back together. We need to put the bumper back on. We have several cross braces and undercovers that we need to throw back on the car. Oh, and the rear wheels. We need 4 wheels for a car to drive right. But once we have all 4 wheels back on the car and all the other stuff I just mentioned, what do you say we go take this thing for a little spin? Because I am an eager freaking beaver to get this thing out on the road.
Many minutes later.
Okay, this is it. I've just spent the last several hours putting everything back onto the car. All of the underside cross members and the exhaust and undercovers and everything on the top side, engine covers on the top and front, putting the entire trunk back together. All of those things are all little things, but it all adds up. It takes a lot of time to do something like this from the time that you actually get the engine back in the car. What do you say we take this thing for its very first test drive after doing an entire mechanical refresh on this engine? I think we should go ahead and do it. So I'm about to set this thing down for the very first time. All right, I'm gonna go ahead, grab the key, and let's go take this thing for a freaking spin. This is going to be actually the first actual cold start since doing the first start of the engine. So hopefully the first, start under normal conditions. Let's see and make sure it goes well. All right, everything sounds quite good. That's a good sign. Now, you know we're freaking doing this drive with the top down because Boxster. Let's go ahead and get this puppy down
and we can back her out. Hey. All right, first in gear. Let's see how the clutch engagement feels. Okay, pretty low. Oh boy, I need to bleed this thing for sure. Holy crap. Yeah, it doesn't feel the greatest, but that's all right. I think it'll get us by on this first drive. Man, that is low. Holy crap. Okay, we're backed out of the garage, and let's hope this clutch pedal doesn't strain us. And ready to take off? Let's do it. Oh wait, I forgot. I need one more thing. One sec, I'll be right back. You know we had to put on the teeny tiny sport coat for this inaugural drive. Well, she's sounding good. What do you say we set off on the inaugural rip? Turning down my test drive road here, just getting her up to temperature. So far, everything feels really good, really smooth. Car drives the exact way it did when we drove it literally across the country from Seattle to Columbus, Ohio. The engine is sounding smooth, baby, and it is coming up to temperature nicely. I definitely think there was something to my thermostat theory about it kind of being stuck open. It was really, really slowly coming up to temperature before. Given that we have the top open, I'm listening for any kind of weird, abnormal sounds, and we'd be able to hear that very well with the top open, given the engine is right there. I'm hearing nothing. This thing is literally butter smooth so far. So, knock on wood, because hey, this thing's actually optioned with real wood veneer. Hopefully it continues to be that way as we continue to warm up and as we venture further into our test drive. I'm gonna get this thing up to temp, and we'll actually put some real Porsche miles on this thing in just a second. All right, friends, well, I've put, I don't know, a few more miles on it since we talked last. The car is officially up to temperature. I did jump out once real quick just to make sure I didn't hear any weird noises. I could stuck my head in the rear wheel wells. That's really hard to say. Rear wheel wells. Also checked for fluids dripping out the bottom, of which there are none. Very good news. So given that all of those things checked okay, I think it's time we do a quick red line on this thing. What do you guys say? So to preface this particular red line, let me just go ahead and say, this is exactly why the base model Boxster is such an absolute gem. It's 200 horsepower, this thing weighs just over 2,800 pounds, and so you can have so much fun with it under 60 miles an hour. And you can work the car so hard, and all you've done is got up to the legal speed limit, like this. Just listen. Oh, this thing sounds so freaking good! Oh man, I love this car so much. The highest we got up to right there was like 72 miles an hour. Dude, this thing is just such an absolute gem. If I were to be on the throttle, full throttle that long in the 911, we'd be up at like 110. And that intake note, dude, the intake note mixed with the exhaust note and you can just hear so well with the top down is just like, I really hope that came across on my microphone, because it is just exactly what makes a flat six a flat six. It is so lovely and so wonderful. And the fact that you can have, this much fun for under $10,000, it should be, it doesn't make any sense.
What's that?
And we're back. Well, friends, and there you have it. Another Fun Ahead TV M96 mechanical restoration done in the books. This thing runs great, it sounds great, it drives great, and I cannot wait for all the things that we have in store coming up with this car on this channel. We're gonna be doing a lot. So if you've enjoyed this series on this budget base model Boxster, please do me a huge favor and hit that like button. I appreciate it very much. Please subscribe if you wanna see even more super awesome Porsche content coming your way via Fun Ahead TV every single week. Oh, and on the note of brand new Porsche content coming your way every single week, we just finished one Boxster. What do you say we go ahead and do another one? And on that teaser, we're gonna end this video today. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate each and every one of you. Yes, I'm looking right at you, and I will see you all in next week's video when maybe we'll talk about this thing. See ya.
Rippin', tearin'. The rippin' and the tearin'.
And I just